Now it's time for Power of Prophecy, continuing the legacy of Tex Mars, exposing evil, and promoting Jesus Christ as Savior. Here's your host, Jerry Barrett.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another edition of Power of Prophecy. I'm your host, Jerry Barrett. Honored to have you join me again this week. Got a very serious program to go through today, but I've got a few prayer requests this week. Dave and Fran from Michigan asked that we pray for their granddaughter, Lindsay. She's 22 and recently told the family she's got gender dysphoria and has begun a gender change. She's a student at a state university and is surrounded by like-minded individuals. They asked that we please pray that God will show her the truth and bring her to the realization of what God's plan is for her life. Mary Jane and Greg sent me an email, asked that we pray for Josh, his wife, children, and parents. Josh is a young man in his 30s. He's a beloved husband, father of 4 children, and a part-time minister of a Bible church. Josh suffered a massive stroke and has been unconscious for a month now. We know God can restore him and want God to be glorified, whatever his will be. So please hold Josh and the family up in your prayers. And I've got some sad news, at least for us living here on earth. Michelle's husband, Joe, had a brother named Lee that passed away this week, and just ask that you hold Joe and Michelle up in your prayers during their time of grief. And if you've got a prayer request, please feel free to email me at prophecy@texmars.com. I'll be happy to add you to our prayer board, get our prayer warriors out there in radio land praying for you. Now, I want to get right to today's program. I've got a whole lot of information for you. This one is going to be on coronavirus. Is it a pandemic or is this a false flag? You know, it's hard to tell these days with as much as the elite, the Illuminati, the powers that be, whatever you want to call them. It seems there's one calamity after another that we have to face. And, well, this is another one. And it appears to be man-made. Now, before this outbreak, I don't know how many of you realized that coronavirus has been around for a while. I saw on Twitter a gentleman did a video, and he showed that on the back of the Lysol can that shows all of the bacteria that it kills, it lists coronavirus as one of the bacteria that Lysol kills. Coronaviruses are quite common. I know you've heard of SARS, MERS, and now COVID-19. They're all part of the same family. They're part of the coronavirus family. Coronavirus is the source of many of the common colds that we get and recover from each and every year. Now, SARS, which stands for Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome, reared its ugly head from November 2002 to July 2003, with more than 8,000 probable cases that were reported to the World Health Organization in 29 countries. There were only 8 confirmed cases in the U.S. The difference is most people that got SARS became ill within 2 to 10 days after they were exposed to this virus. The death rate was almost 10%. But adults over 60, that likelihood jumps to 50% with SARS. But SARS hadn't been around since 2004. MERS, or Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, there were 27 countries that were affected globally, and 10 of them were in or near the Arabian Peninsula. Only 2 patients in the United States ever tested positive for MERS. To date, there have been nearly 2,500 laboratory-confirmed cases of MERS, and the death rate of this is 34%. Do you remember the swine flu, H1N1? That was a 2009 global pandemic. It's estimated between 150 and almost 600,000 people worldwide died from this swine flu in 2009. Out of all those, 12,400 deaths occurred in the United States. Now, the global death rate for swine flu was at 0.02%. Now, the swine flu still circulates every year as a seasonal flu virus. But the flu, or influenza, is a respiratory illness, very contagious, and the symptoms are very similar to SARS, MERS, and COVID-19. There are different strains of flu that are responsible for the flu season that happens every year. The Centers for Disease Control here in America estimates there have been between 18,000 and 46,000 flu deaths so far this season. Now, in comparison, COVID-19, or coronavirus, that we all hear about on the news every day, has spread to more than 50 countries and infected more than 85,000 people worldwide since January. Experts estimate that the death rate for this virus is going to be about 2%, but that's always subject to change. You hear death rates of 3, 4, 5%, but that's before they have all the data in their hands. And how many people have gotten sick with flu-like symptoms, stayed home, took Theraflu or whatever, built up their immune system with echinacea or vitamin C, vitamin D, and beat it? They don't go to the doctor. They don't get tested. They're not a confirmed case. So all of that has to be factored in after the pandemic is finished. Now, everybody knows, let me rephrase it. I would like to say that everybody knows that this virus was first detected in Wuhan, China. Now, the loony left and the mainstream or lamestream media will tell you if you blame it on China or a foreign country or Wuhan, you're being a racist, a xenophobe. But in Wuhan, China, in 2017, China installed the first of 5 planned biolabs. They wanted to study these high-risk pathogens like Ebola and SARS. Now, there was another lab in Beijing where SARS escaped 3 or 4 times. It was crazy how the virus kept getting out of the containment room. What people don't know is the Wuhan National Biosafety Laboratory is located 20 miles from the Hunan seafood market that people have claimed is the epicenter of this outbreak. What a lot of people don't realize is the Wuhan lab also does animal research. That's right. In communist-controlled China, the restrictions and regulations on animal research are nowhere near what we face here in America or some other Western countries. The studies cost less, and there are fewer barriers that limit or slow them down. They don't have PETA running out and trying to open the cages of all the little monkeys, because if they tried that, they'd be shot. We're talking communist China. Now, when they're developing vaccines, they use these lab monkeys as test subjects. Then, if they're successful in that, then they start human trials, right? But monkeys are not predictable. They run, they'll scratch, they'll bite, and whatever they scratch, bite, claw, run, doesn't matter. They're carrying that virus with their feet, their nails, and their teeth. But I came across this piece of information. It was in InfoWars, and I found it in other places as well. 3 months before the virus outbreak, the Bill and Melinda Gates, the king of vaccines and population control, Bill Gates, their foundation co-hosted a pandemic exercise that simulated a global coronavirus outbreak. Did you hear that? 3 months before the outbreak, they had an exercise of a coronavirus outbreak. On top of that, they just happened to fund the group who owns the patent to the deadly virus and are working on a vaccine to help cure it. It's almost like Bill Gates has a God complex, isn't it? He's invested in a company that has a patent on this virus. They're looking to develop a vaccine for this virus. And they can save the world, but they can also control the population with these viruses, can't they? There is a UK government-funded organization called Barrett. It's the Barrett Institute. It applied for a patent for the live coronavirus in June of 2015, and Bill and Melinda Gates are the primary funder of this foundation. They donated to the Institute with a 2013 grant looking to improve our understanding of and effective use of current control tools and measures, including vaccines, against 2 serious diseases affecting livestock that are widespread in developing countries. Get this? Developing countries, not developed, developing. In November of 2019, the Barrett Institute's website published an article focusing on the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's funding of a livestock antibody hub. Quote, the program of work will utilize research outcomes in livestock disease and immunology to support human health. That's their claim. At the same time they announced this livestock antibody hub program, they had a job opening that said, quote, the post holder will report to the heads of the coronavirus group and the viral oncogenesis group and will work closely with a multidisciplinary team to advance the aims of the overall Barrett livestock antibody hub. All of this took place prior to the Wuhan coronavirus outbreak. Also before the outbreak, in October of 2019, is when the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, along with the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health and the World Economic Forum, held this event in New York City where policymakers, business leaders, and health officials worked together on a simulated coronavirus outbreak. They titled the event Event 201. It was a pandemic exercise that dropped the participants right in the midst of an uncontrolled coronavirus outbreak that was spreading like wildfire out of South America to wreak worldwide havoc. In this simulation, the coronavirus outbreak resulted in the death of 65 million people in 18 months. Did you get that? 65 million people in 18 months. Event 201 promoted globalism as the solution to this pandemic. You have to ask yourself this question. Is this illness being intentionally spread so governments worldwide will join forces in the name of stopping the virus, or so groups like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation can step in and become saviors? Or could it be just a coincidence? Henry Macko, a friend of the ministry, got on Twitter and he said, quote, Bill Gates kept telling us a pandemic was coming. In October 2019, he ran a simulation of a coronavirus pandemic. Just 3 months later, the real coronavirus pandemic begins. Another person on Twitter, Ken Jones, said, quote, coronavirus is a patented virus. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, one of the primary owners. Deep State released the virus to create chaos since nothing is stopping Trump. That's an interesting aside. Now, Dr. Jeremy Faust is an emergency medicine doctor at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. He said, quote, kids and adults have done extremely well in terms of recovery so far. It's so critical that we do not waste our resources among the young and healthy, and that we really focus on the area where this might really get out of control. Dr. William Schaffner, a professor of preventative medicine and infectious diseases at the Vanderbilt University School of Medicine in Nashville, Tennessee, says, Our understanding of the disease is still developing, and the statistics are preliminary. They're all estimates. What are you counting as a case in your particular country? That case definition has varied a lot. Now, experts expect to see the rate decrease as the healthcare system starts finding milder cases. Dr. Faust said, quote, "What I was able to find by looking at a few other data sources, rather than just the big flashy numbers, was that there's actually a lot of reason to be reassured that the numbers are a lot lower. Because the sickest people are showing up at hospitals, this group is likely overrepresented among the full population of people who have COVID-19. Many individuals will never even see a healthcare provider to be tested. Those are the figures they'll have to recalculate later." Now, Dr. Schaffner said, quote, "If you get to people over 70, we're going to have a much higher fatality rate. And I've seen some estimates of even as high as 10%, which would be huge for people 70 and older. But remember, those people accumulate a whole lot of underlying diseases, which adds to their risk. They have heart disease, diabetes, lung disease. Some of these people, particularly from China, have lived in polluted environments their whole life. Some of the men especially have been lifetime smokers. So they are at a very increased risk of severe disease. Right now, the expert's best guess is that COVID-19 is probably more deadly than the seasonal flu, but much less deadly than other high-profile outbreaks like Ebola, SARS, and MERS, where the death rates are 50%, 10%, and 35% respectively. Dr. Schaffner said, quote, "There's a large epidemic of coronavirus anxiety. I think people ought to take a deep breath and spend a little more time planning what to do if the coronavirus really came into their community and they had to undergo what we call social distancing, which is separating themselves from other people. If you do this now, when you're more calm, it works much better when you have time to apply it rather than planning in a more anxious moment later on." Close quote. So the idea here is to plan ahead, not wait until it hits your little community or your big city, but plan ahead. But if you listen to the mortality rates, you realize that those with an underlying condition, you could be asthmatic, you could have COPD, you could have other pulmonary issues. You could have heart disease, diabetes. Especially if you're over the age of 70, you're at a higher risk of contracting the disease and dying from it than those less than 50 years of age. Now, the Surgeon General for the U.S., Surgeon General Jerome Adams, said, quote, "We want people who are older, people who have medical conditions, to take steps to protect themselves, including avoiding crowded spaces, including thinking very carefully about whether or not now is the time to get on that cruise ship, whether now is the time to take that long-haul flight. For most people, you're going to be fine. But if you have medical conditions or you're older, now is the time to rethink that." Close quote. That's sound advice. Consider it. If you're 50 and up, do you really want to get on that cruise ship? We've seen 2 of them be quarantined, one in Japan, one now off the coast of San Francisco. Do you want to put yourself in that environment? I've taken a couple cruises. I love spending time on the boat. I sleep like a baby, but there are 2 shifts for dinner, an early and a late. And that dining room is packed. And they put you at a table with total strangers. And they're trying to do this to help build a sense of community on the boat. There are workout places, there's pools, there's lots of bars, there's discotheques, there's shopping. And everybody is contained in this small area. So if one person has come in contact with somebody and they've contracted coronavirus, chances are they're going to pass it on throughout the ship. Now, if you recall in the news, it was big news. The number of seniors who passed away at King County's Life Center in Washington, the state of Washington, had 16 residents die from this infection that went undetected for weeks. There were 76 total residents in the building, which made a mortality rate of 21%. But that's an anomaly. It went undetected for weeks. According to the World Health Organization, the chance of dying if you catch the disease depends heavily on your age. If you're 80 and above, the fatality rate is 14.8%. 70 to 79 is 8%. 60 to 69 is 3.6%. You get down to ages 10 to 39, the mortality rate is 0.2%. And there have been no fatalities involving children under the age of 10. This brings to mind Obamacare, the death panels that everybody talked about. They claimed that it wasn't part of it. But if this virus, whether it's a bioweapon or not, targets elderly, then it gets rid of a bunch of useless eaters, doesn't it? And that's what the death panels were set up for, is to keep control of who saw medical care, making the younger that were still paying taxes and working, being somewhat productive citizens of society, they were deemed to be more valuable than those who were retired that weren't contributing as much to society. They're useless eaters. We can kill them off. That's what the death panels were set up for. And that's the mortality rate of this disease for the elderly is ridiculously high. If you are one of the risk groups, it is imperative that you take steps to prevent you catching this disease. They recommend at the CDC that you have supplies on hand. So if you take medications, call your family doctor. Have extra medication ready for you so that you can stock up on it in case you're homebound for an extended period of time. If you can't get them from your pharmacy, think about using a mail order for medication. Make sure you have over-the-counter medications and supplies that will help treat fever and other symptoms of the flu. If you know somebody's sick, avoid contact with them. They tell you to wash your hands regular. They want you to wash your hands with soap for 20 seconds, especially if you've blown your nose, coughed, or sneezed, or you've been in a public place. They want you to wash your hands. It doesn't guarantee you're not going to catch it, but this helps minimize. If you can't get to soap and water, use a hand sanitizer that has to be at least 60% alcohol. And I happen to find on Twitter a recipe recommended by the CDC to create your own hand sanitizer. I'm going to post this on our webpage right underneath the program so that you can make it. But it takes 2/3 of a cup of isopropyl alcohol, which is 91% is rubbing alcohol. 1/3 cup of aloe vera gel. If you have an essential oil in the fragrance that you like, then you can add that. They want you to have a mixing bowl, a spoon, and an empty container where you can put this hand sanitizer. And then you mix up the alcohol, the aloe vera, until it's very well blended. Put in 8 to 10 drops of essential oil just for the smell and stir it up. And then you put this in your squeeze bottle and you've created a homemade hand sanitizer. Like I said, I'm going to post that on our webpage just as a precaution. They don't want you to touch surfaces in public places like elevator buttons, door handles, handrails, handshakes with other people. If you can, use a tissue or your sleeve before you touch anything. They don't want you touching your eyes, your nose, and your face. Clean your home. Disinfect your home. Get rid of the germs. Frequently clean surfaces that you touch. And avoid crowds. I mean, I don't know if many of you are aware of it, but it's getting towards the end of basketball season. The NBA has suspended all basketball games. 2 players have tested positive for coronavirus. Now, they're young. They're in great health. So it's probably going to manifest itself more like the flu. But they're contagious. In the NCAA tournament, it's time for March Madness. The players are playing these games at this time with no crowds. Each team is given 125 tickets. That's it. In these 15,000-seat arenas, they have 250 people plus the needed personnel that will support the game being played. And that's it. Because large gatherings can promote the passing on of this virus. You need to have a plan in case you get sick. You need to know the symptoms, what to look for. Contact your health provider and get those. Stay in touch with friends and family via phone and email. And you need to make a plan in case your caretaker comes down with a virus as well. The best thing you can do is arm yourself with knowledge. Not panic, but arm yourself with knowledge. There is a lot of it out there for you to readily get good, honest answers. Don't go to the emergency room. Don't go, unless you have symptoms, don't call your doctor to go in and see them. But you can talk to a physician's assistant or a nurse. They can give you what to look for. You can talk to them about getting your prescriptions advanced so that you don't run out in case you're homebound. But plan ahead. It's always better to be prepared than to have to deal with an emergency. During an emergency, you're probably going to forget half of the things that you need to do. And when you remember, it's too late. So plan ahead. Now, I'm not terrified of this virus. I'm almost 60, so my numbers are increasing as far as a potential for dying. But I'm not freaking out. I am not going to the store and buying every roll of toilet paper in the building. The panic that has been created by mainstream or lamestream media is ridiculous. Be calm. Use your common sense, and you'll be okay. Now, I've got a whole lot more information I want to share with you, some data that I've collected over the last few weeks. A number of you have been calling and asking about this coronavirus, and that's why I did this show today, is to pass on all the information that I've gathered. I could wait, but there's so much data coming in every day that it would be 6 months and then it's too late. Be prepared and we'll be okay. You're listening to Power of Prophecy. I'm your host, Jerry Barrett. I'll be right back with you after this brief message. Stay with us, won't you? Hello, friends. Jerry Barrett back with you again. If this is a bioweapon, and it has been leashed on the population at large around the globe. It would take a psychopath to perpetrate this mass murder. Tex Mars, before his passing, wrote a groundbreaking book on his research on the explosion of psychopaths across America and the serious implications that you and I face. This is the first and only book to fully explore psychopathy from a political, social perspective. After first explaining how the warped psychopathic mindset, Tex goes on to describe how a sick and decadent society actually fosters psychopathic behavior and encourages disorderly, criminal, and antisocial activity. Tex shows how psychopathic activity continues to cyclically increase in society until it finally reaches the boiling point that he calls crazy times. This fantastic period is when anything goes and psychopaths practically run amok. The chaotic situation is usually followed by a monstrous historic era similar to those of the Nazi and communist epochs. Psychopathic con men who claim to be the elite take charge of the government, make incomprehensible changes, and commence horrific crimes against normal human beings. America is even now at the threshold of this terrible age of psychopathic destruction. Psychopaths Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow. It's a 208-page book written by Tex Mars. It's in a large format. It's a big book. And we're only asking $25 for this outstanding work. Psychopaths Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow. Now, please add $5 shipping and handling. That would make your total $30 to get this outstanding book. And you can phone us toll-free in Canada and the United States at 1-800-234-9673. You can phone us on our regular line, which is 512-263-9780. We're in the office Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Time. We take Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and American Express, and we cannot wait to hear from you. Call us up. Get this book, Psychopaths. That's all you have to say. I want that book, Psychopaths. And we'll know exactly what you're talking about. We'll get it processed and coming to you. Now, if you care to order this online at our secure shopping cart, all you have to do is go to powerofprophecy.com. It's there in a couple places on our main page. You click on it, submit the quantity, put in your name, your address, your charge card, your shipping method, hit submit, we get it, we process it, and usually by the next business day, it is whisking its way on to you. We don't dally. We want you to have this book, and we want you to have it as soon as possible. Now, if you care to send in a check, money order, or cash, please make your check or money order payable to Power of Prophecy, and you can mail it to us here at 4819 R.O. Drive, Suite 102 in Spicewood, Texas, and our zip code is 78669. We so look forward to hearing from you. We want you to get a copy of this book, Psychopaths Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow. Arm yourself with knowledge. That's the key. Arm yourself with knowledge. The more you know, the more you're aware of what's going on in your surroundings, the better you are to react. Okay? Now, let's return to our regular program. Today we're talking about the coronavirus. Is this a pandemic or is it a false flag? Now, there are a number of people who are out there that are level-headed, that are lambasting the doom and gloomers out there that are saying that this is going to wipe out half the population. Dr. David Drew Pinsky, also known as Dr. Drew, slammed the media. He said that it is irresponsible for they're causing the American public to panic, and it's hurting businesses and people. Dr. Drew said, quote, a bad flu season is 80,000 dead. We've got about 18,000 dead from influenza this year. We have 100 from corona? Which should you be worried about, influenza or corona? 100 versus 18,000. This isn't a trick question. And look, everything that's going on with the New York City cleaning the subways and everybody using Clorox wipes and get your flu shot, which should be the other message, that's good. That's the good thing. There's no problem with those behaviors. What I have a problem with is the panic and the fact that businesses are getting destroyed, that people's lives are being upended, not by the virus, but by the panic. The panic must stop. And the press, they really somehow need to be held accountable because they are hurting people. Close quote. You've seen it. I've seen it. I went to the grocery store in my little town Monday. There was a little bit of toilet paper. There was a little bit of paper towels. There were no Lysol cans. There were no hand wipes. There were no hand sanitizers. Nothing. That shelf was bare. And they ship every day from the warehouse to that little grocery store. That's ridiculous. People are stockpiling on toilet paper. I'll tell you a story. While I was going through the toilet paper aisle, everybody's got to have some. So we're low at the house. I bought a 6-pack of toilet paper. There was a gentleman and a woman. I don't know if they were from England or if they were from Australia. I didn't listen close enough to the accent. But she said, how many should we get? And he said, well, you need one. I need one, so we probably ought to get an extra one in case they run out again. That's the mindset that lamestream media has created, the panic. They were out of water for a week at my little store. Now, they had bottles of water when I went Monday. But they have created such a firestorm of panic. I'm surprised there were any canned goods left on the shelf, any meat in the meat locker. The thing that I tell people, be prepared. I mean that. Be prepared. But what about your fellow man? Do you need 20 cases of bottled water? No. Do you need 60, 100 rolls of toilet paper? No. Use common sense. The reason that they're creating this panic is to control you. Think about 9/11. For the first time in my life, I saw service members with M16s in our local airport, standing there. Then George W. Bush was able to get, and his cohorts were able to get the Patriot Act passed. In the name of your safety, you gave up your liberties because of the panic that was created by the inside job that's known as 9/11. That's what's happening here. They're creating and fomenting a panic. And people aren't thinking about fellow man. They're thinking about me, 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 me. Is that biblical? I think not. Now, I mentioned Dr. Faust. He's an emergency room physician. He's also an instructor at the Harvard Medical School. And he wrote a column for Slate that's titled, COVID-19 Isn't as Deadly as We Think. Dr. Faust wrote, quote, the true case fatality rate of this virus is likely to be far lower than current reports suggest. Even some lower estimates, such as the 1% death rate recently mentioned by the directors of the National Institutes of Health and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, likely substantially overstate the case. This all suggests that COVID-19 is a relatively benign disease for most young people and a potentially devastating one for the old and chronically ill, albeit not nearly as risky as reported. Close quote. This is from an ER doctor. Now, you remember I talked about the cruise ship, how you might want to stay off of them? Well, I know a number of them have suspended operations. Dr. Faust said that the Diamond Princess cruise ship indicates that the suggested fatalities from the virus are being exaggerated. Dr. Faust said, quote, "A quarantine boat is an ideal, if unfortunate, natural laboratory to study a virus. Of the 3,711 people that were on board, at least 705 tested positive for the virus." Now, if you think about it, there's not a lot of places to go on a boat to be by yourself other than in your cabin. And nobody does that on a cruise ship. They're everywhere. If you consider that 705 out of 3,700 people tested positive, that's a good low number. Of those tested, more than half were asymptomatic. This alone suggests a halving of the virus's true fatality rate. There were 6 deaths that occurred on the Diamond Princess. If you do the math, that's a fatality rate of 0.85%. And all 6 fatalities were people that were more than 70 years of age. No one under 70 died on that cruise ship. But now we've got healthy people that are hoarding food, hoarding masks, hand sanitizer you can't find on the shelf. They think they're doing the right thing. But these actions represent misdirected anxiety. Close quote. Dr. James Phillips, an emergency room physician and assistant professor at George Washington University Medical Group, said, quote, "You won't find a single expert out there who's saying this is going to be contained. The data that we know from China shows that roughly 98 to 99% of us are going to do very, very well." Close quote. Then I came across this. It was posted on Facebook. Somebody shared it on Twitter. Written by a doctor and an infectious disease specialist who's in Toronto, Canada. His name is Abdu Sharkway. He posted this on March 5th. "I've been at this for more than 20 years, seeing sick patients on a daily basis. I've worked in inner-city hospitals and in the poorest slums of Africa. HIV, AIDS, hepatitis, tuberculosis, SARS, measles, shingles, whooping cough, diphtheria. There's little I haven't been exposed to in my profession, and with notable exception of SARS, very little has left me feeling vulnerable, overwhelmed, and downright scared. I'm not scared of COVID-19. I am concerned about the implications of a novel infectious agent that has spread the world over and continues to find new footholds in different soil. I am rightly concerned for the welfare of those who are elderly, in frail health, or disenfranchised who stand to suffer mostly and disproportionately at the hands of this new scourge. What I am scared about is the loss of reason and wave of fear that has induced the mass of society into a spellbinding spiral of panic, stockpiling obscene quantities of anything that could fill a bomb shelter adequately in a post-apocalyptic world. I'm scared of the N95 masks that are stolen from hospitals and urgent care clinics where they are actually needed for frontline healthcare providers and instead are being donned in airports, malls, and coffee lounges, perpetuating even more fear and suspicion of others." This is all written by Dr. Abdu Sharkway. "But mostly, I'm scared about what message we're telling our kids when faced with a threat. Instead of using reason, rationality, open-mindedness, and altruism, we are telling them to panic, be fearful, suspicious, reactionary, and self-interested. I implore you all, temper fear with reason, panic with patience, and uncertainty with education. We have an opportunity to learn a great deal about health hygiene and limiting the spread of innumerable transmissible diseases in our society." Close quote. That's from a doctor. This is from a doctor from MIT. His name is Shiva Ayyadurai. He's got a doctorate in biological engineering, and he studies and does research nearly every day on the immune system. He said, quote, "The coronavirus fear-mongering by the deep state will go down in history as one of the biggest frauds to manipulate economies, suppress dissent, and push mandated medicine," close quote. Mandated medicine, socialized medicine, Medicare for all. Democrats have seized upon this crisis to blame Trump for the recent stock market crash, almost to the point of cheering on this chaos. Ordo ab chaos, order out of chaos. Trump's been blasted for having the United States ill-prepared. Others have asserted the crisis has been hijacked by Trump's political adversaries. So both sides of the aisle are blaming each other. In a Reuters poll released last week, they found that Democrats are twice as likely as Republicans to say that the virus poses an imminent threat to the United States. But consider this. Back in 2009, when the H1N1 outbreak occurred, the swine flu, in October of 2009, Obama declared the so-called swine flu a national emergency. But this only happened after millions of Americans had become infected and 1,000 Americans had died. Seems to me President Trump is addressing the situation head-on with numbers that pale in comparison to the annual flu. You want some numbers? Influenza and pneumonia caused 55,672 deaths in the year 2017 here in America. Over the past decade, the flu has affected between 9.3 and 45 million people each year, depending on the severity of the flu. Hospitalizations for the flu have ranged from 140,000 to 800,000 people per year, and the deaths vary between 12 and 61,000 each year. These numbers, in America only, eclipse any number of coronavirus fatalities that you hear about worldwide. From the flu. The coronavirus is a flu. And the reason that lamestream media is blowing this up, it's all about the ratings. If you're online, it's about views and clicks. The axiom of lamestream media is, if it bleeds, it leads. It gets your attention. This viral outbreak is the perfect story. It's even better than that Malaysian airline disappearing. It's even better than that white Bronco with an accused murderer by the name of O.J. Simpson. It's more sensational. But the best part for the lamestream media is they can lay the blame for this calamity right at the feet of Donald Trump. And they are loving it. They're trying to keep him from being reelected. If you look at the media with regular eyes, not rose-colored eyes, but if you look at it through a regular lens, you can see that they're already campaigning for the Democratic nominee. They don't hide their bias anymore. They are stoking fear about quarantines, supply chains being disrupted. They claim that this has caused the stock market to act like a roller coaster, go up and down, and crash. What is one of Trump's major achievements in his 3 years of office so far? The economy. But if they take the stock market down 25%, they believe it helps the Democrats. Ironically, the February jobs report came out showing that 273,000 jobs had been added and unemployment was at a record low 3.5%. This doesn't help lamestream media's narrative, does it? As of March 9th, there were 107,352 cases worldwide, 3,646 deaths, and 60,558 recoveries. As of March 9th, there had been 15 deaths here in the United States. So that means that the odds of recovering from this virus are much greater than the odds of dying. Let me give you a little additional perspective on this. Heart disease kills 1,774 people a day. Cancer kills 1,641. Accidents, 466. And strokes, 401 per day. Here's some other numbers. 67 people are victims of serial killers. 986 are killed by the police. 75 die from lawnmower accidents. 31 are struck by lightning, and 1 American dies each year on Black Friday because they're trampled, while all the idiots run through the door. Medical errors are far more dangerous than this viral epidemic. Between 250 and 400,000 Americans die each year from medical errors. This is the 3rd most common cause of death in America. Medical errors. I laugh and tell people that's why they call it a practice. If they knew what they were doing, they would call it a job, not a practice. That's tongue-in-cheek, of course. I don't want to offend our doctor friends, but practice. Well, Rush Limbaugh's weighed in. Rush Limbaugh said, quote, "The drive-by media is back to weaponizing the coronavirus against the Trump administration." I mean, these are the people that claim to have all the compassion, they have all the understanding, they have all of the feelings for people. They're running around, could be an opening for the Democrats. What does it mean to say that the coronavirus, it could be an opening for the Democrats? It means the suffering of people could be an opening for the Democrats, and they're excited about it. They're unable to let go of it. Close quote. Limbaugh also opined that the coronavirus won't be as devastating as the Democrats seem to hope. Limbaugh said, quote, "The drive-by media wants you to think that this massive stock market plunge is because of the coronavirus. Some of it is, but the vast majority of this has nothing to do with the coronavirus. Absolutely nothing. The drop in oil prices is what's affecting Wall Street. But this drop in oil prices is going to be good for the consumers, right? This is good news for everybody except for producers. This always happens every time the production price of oil drops. The crude price, the barrel price, everybody panics, the stock market drops." Close quote. I found this written by Mark Alexander in the Patriot Post. He said the political and mainstream media churn over the coronavirus variant is about 10% substance and 90% fragrance. But it makes for great fodder and clickbait, which in turn converts to good media advertising revenues. Mark Alexander said that he found it amusingly similar to an almost 40-year-old work of fiction with the facts about the Wu flu, the Wuhan flu, is a case of life imitating art. He said, "Do you remember the Wuhan 400 virus Dean Koontz described in his 1981 novel, The Eyes of Darkness?" Koontz writes about a Chinese scientist named Li who discloses a record of China's most important and dangerous new biological weapon. They call the stuff Wuhan 400 because it was developed at their rDNA labs outside the city of Wuhan, and Wuhan 400 is a perfect weapon. It afflicts only human beings. Think about that. I've told you before, I have read Tom Clancy's work, love it. I know it's fiction, but he intersperses a lot of facts and truth in the book to tell part of the story. Dean Koontz has done the same thing. They both are very good at what they do. Senator Tom Cotton, a Republican from Arkansas, is not suggesting that COVID-19 was bioengineered and then intentionally released, but he did make this connection. We don't know where it originated, and we have to get to the bottom of that. We also know that just a few miles away from that food market is China's only biosafety level 4 super lab that researches human infectious diseases. In his article, Mark continues, in January, the Communist Chinese Directorate of Disinformation, or the Information Department of the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, began seeding Chinese social media networks with rumors that the Wu flu virus was actually developed by the U.S. and deliberately released in Wuhan. Such disinformation is designed to help the Central Politburo of the Communist Party of China counter and deflect any claims by the World Health Organization or the United States that the current coronavirus release is associated with the PRC's P4 labs in Wuhan. Interesting. So Dean Koontz wrote about this back in 1981, the Wu flu, Wuhan 400. Interesting. Life imitating fiction? These are things that you really have to question, don't you? Now, the reason they call it corona or COVID-19, CO stands for corona, VI is for virus, and D is for disease, so COVID, coronavirus disease. And because it was discovered in 2019, that's the -19, so COVID-19. Now, a lot of people are getting up in arms for saying that it's the Wuhan virus or the Chinese virus or China virus, and they're calling people that call it the Wuhan or China virus or a foreign country virus like Donald Trump has, that it's xenophobic, that it's racist. When in fact, if you think about it, we have West Nile virus. Why was it called that? Because it was discovered at the West Nile. We have Ebola. Not far from the first Ebola case was another river named the Ebola River. There is a strain of Ebola called the Mayinga strain. They believe that it is an airborne pathogen, and the nurse who was treating a patient with Ebola had a last name of Mayinga. So it's not xenophobic to call it what it is. It's a Wuhan virus because that's where it was discovered. It's not racist to call it the Chinese virus because it was discovered in Wuhan, China. That's where it was first discovered. There's even the Spanish flu. Why is it called the Spanish flu? Do we blame Spain? Do we blame Latinos? No, because that's where it was discovered. That one happened in 1918. There was a 2 to 3% mortality rate with that killed almost 30 million people worldwide. That was a serious pandemic. But they didn't have the medicines and the equipment that we have today. They didn't have oxygen. They didn't have respirators. They didn't have all the antibiotics and knowledge that the researchers have gained over the years. Now I'm going to close telling you this. Authorities are going to make local recommendations for high-risk individuals that are based on the evolving data that's being collected here and elsewhere. Pay attention to those public health advisories. They announced yesterday here in Austin that you cannot go into a nursing home without first being screened. They don't want you going in there and bringing an undetected virus like coronavirus, COVID-19, Wuhan virus, China virus, whatever you want to call it. They don't want you to bring it into the nursing home because we already know that people over 70 are highly susceptible to dying from this virus. So pay attention to your public health advisors. Now, at the end of the day, the media is going to do what they do. They're not going to let a tragedy go to waste. I mean, Rahm Emanuel said it best. Never let a crisis go to waste. Make the most of it. They're looking for advertising dollars. They're going to sensationalize everything. All I can tell you is be prepared. Be diligent with your personal hygiene. Stock up on your medication, on items that help fight fever and the flu. Get some food stored up. You don't need 6 months worth of freeze-dried food. Not for this. Now, it could happen where you need to have it, but you should always be prepared. I'm not saying that so you'll call and order our freeze-dried food that we offer here at the ministry. I'm saying be prepared. Make a plan. Think about all of the contingencies that you need to handle. Is it a serious issue? Yes, very. Is it something that you should worry about? Not incessantly. Pray for guidance. Pray for wisdom. And we'll continue to pray for your good health. I thank you again for tuning in and giving me another hour of your time. I greatly appreciate y'all doing that. The fact that you're listening, that you enjoy the program, and that you gain knowledge from what I'm putting out there. And I pray that you will tune in again next week at this same time. Tune in and discover the power of prophecy.